Hey everyone, Aaron Stewart, Data Access Golf live today on this Data Monday. Just wrapped up the podcast and threw it up, but I wanted to go through some of the cool stuff that happened this week with you live. It was such a, the word that keeps coming to mind is such a satisfying victory. That Nate Lashley was nails. I mean, what an amazing story. To come through what he's come through, to see what he's seen, to not have really any... I mean, how in the world did he muster up the confidence to go through and get that done is beyond me, but super impressive. And it's just the kind of guy that you can't help but just be super happy about. So I'm looking forward to going through the data that matters to kind of see how he got this done. We don't have a lot of data on Nate. He's played all over the world. I'm not like this guy. So anyway, I wanted to jump right in. I'm going to change screens here and bring up essentially a sort of a presentation type, but I also wanted to jump over. I've got a couple screens over here on the side. And so we're going to be jumping kind of back and forth as we get going. But before we do that, data matters. And we're going to get into the data. Thanks, welcome back. I love having that intro to run because I was able to go get my Pepsi Zero Sugar. They really should sponsor me. I don't know what the deal is, but they don't. I just drink it because of its max taste, and the caffeine ain't bad either. So, all right. So let's jump right into it. A little, again, with Data Monday, we'll always go through and we'll talk about, kind of compare the data of the player from 2018 to what they did this weekend. There's always a huge difference there. When you win, you usually play well in a lot of different areas. So we'll look at that. And then we'll also get into kind of some of the numbers of Steve Stricker. We'll get into a little history about Nate Lashley, just because none of us know anything about this guy. I read somewhere that he was like in less than 10 of the fantasy drafts out of the millions and millions who filled one out, the fantasy cards for this week. And you know the ones that had him had absolutely no idea about anybody, right? I mean, they're in some sort of office pool. They don't care and don't care about golf, but didn't want to be the idiot that wasn't in, right? So they just filled one out. And that's the only way Nate Lashley got on, because anybody who knows and understands golf would have never chose him based on, what he's done so far this year and the struggles that he's had. So I wanted to run in. We're going to do a really quick history on him first, and then we're going to go look at sort of the history of this year, because that's pretty fascinating. And then we'll get back into some of the other data right off the bat. So what I wanted to do first is really get into this, this history of Nate, at least what we've learned about him over the course of the last few days, really. So I'll bring that up real quick on this screen here. So you can see here that he joined the PGA Tour in 2017 when he was 36 years old. And he had quite a career as a collegiate golfer, and went to the University of Arizona, which everybody knows I'm a Sun Devil. And so this is literally the first Arizona Wildcat I've ever cheered for. And it was awesome. And I will never stop cheering for this guy. And I can't really call him a kid. He's 36, right? I mean, that's right in the age. Anything over 35 is not much of a kid anymore. And he is a very mature 36. It's kind of thrust upon him. So anyway, he's only had one top 10 finish and 32 events on the PGA Tour. In this particular tournament, in the Rocket Mortgage Classic, he went to qualify. Monday qualifying didn't, and then happened to get in as a second alternate, which is fortuitous for sure, and then went on to lead wire to wire. The first one to do that since Brooke Koepka in 2017, I think is what I read. So amazing. We've kind of mentioned it all right, but in 2004, he was up in Wyoming playing playing with his college team there, the Wildcats. And his mom and dad and his girlfriend had flown up in Dad's private plane to watch him play. And on the way home, went down, crashed, and all three of them died. Tragedy. I don't know how you... Tragedy, right? And he sort of muddled his way through and then tried to figure out what golf was about, but left golf. It's just so hard in a situation like that. And I don't know what it is about plane crashes, but they always seem to be way more tragic than any other way to really die. And I don't know if it's because, we know that plane travel's supposed to be a lot safer, so the odds of dying in a plane are far lower. So when it happens, we're just more surprised. Or it's just there's more of us that are terrified to fly, maybe. I don't know what it is. I had two uncles. I've actually got two uncles who went down in a plane crash. And they were flying the younger uncle and his fiance down to meet her parents. The three of them died. So this plane crash tragedy is something that we get as a family, and understand somewhat what Nate went through, but a little bit different. Losing an uncle is far different than losing a father and a mother and your girlfriend, obviously. So he went through some tough times there, and you could kind of tell that he's different because of it. I was really taken by when he tapped in that last little 1 footer, whatever it was, for the victory. There was no big arm punch. There was no jumping around. There was no... he appreciates golf. He said that in his post-tournament interview, that he feels grateful to play golf, but he obviously realizes that it is just golf, and that life had thrown him a lot of serious curveballs, and that has somewhat tempered, I think, his jubilation, for sure. He's grateful for it. He has job security, all of that, but it almost seemed like when he put that final putt in, it was more relief than anything else, and so satisfying for me. It was just kind of like just this rush of, how many amazing, great stories on tour this year. When Tiger won the Masters, you kind of thought, well, nobody's going to top that. And then to have a Gary Woodland do so well at Pebble Beach, and that whole thing with him and Amy, and that viral video and what he did after that was so cool. And to see so many play well. To see Rory back, I don't know. There's just been so many really cool stories this year. And there's been a lot of players that we didn't expect to do well, and that's fun. Even last week with Jason Sucher, he, for 54 holes, he looked unstoppable, and he had that little slip, which kind of made this whole thing with Nate Lashley so much more impressive. Is we kind of expected for him to slip too, and he just didn't. And so you have to wonder, what did those earlier experiences do for him? Toughened him up, changed his priorities, maybe changed perception a little bit. So the pressure of a golf tournament is, that's no big deal. I've dealt with far more than that. And maybe that's all it took. But super amazing play. Went down there. He had a 3-win season on the PGA Tour, Latino America. In 2015, a win on the Web.com Tour got him on the PGA Tour. In 2017, he was, he was injured for some of 2018. So when we see his numbers a little bit, those are somewhat, they're still his numbers, but he didn't play a full season. And even if he had been healthy, I don't think that he was rated high enough where he was going to get into a lot of tournaments, which is why, again, he had to get in on being second alternate for this particular one. Anyway, he had a win on the Web.com Tour, which is now oh boy, what is that thing? It's like Corn something. Kelly Corn? I have no idea. But that is, how are we going to get used to that? I saw it all over the place, and I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. That's, again, a discussion for another day. Change the name of your company, please, because we don't want to have to say that for the next 10 years. I beg of you. Okay. And then I love this. 22 of his 28 birdies, which led the field, came from 10 feet or less, which is truly amazing. He set a record for birdies on par fours this week. He made more birdies on par fours than any other player in a tournament this year. So some really amazing play, which then leads you to believe, like, okay, what was he playing? And I thought that was pretty interesting. I'm going to bring up this other screen real quick, and we can kind of take a look at it if I can remember how to do it. Here you go. So if kind of hard to see there, but so I was interested to see what he played, and what he played was, wow, all ping, 100% ping. And let me see if I could change that real quick. I don't like that. Is that better? I like that better. So yeah, if you look at what he played here, it's all ping. Ping's got to be thrilled, right? You've got the 410 LST driver, the 410 LST 3-wood. I did not know that they made a 410 7-wood, but he plays the 7-wood, 20.5 degree 7-wood, ping I210s, really cool, ping glides, and all. I thought this was not interesting, but how smart is this? This is something that I talked about on the podcast recently, is that just make sure when you go in and get fit that your clubs from, all your irons and your wedges are all the same setup. Don't mess with that. Don't have a Volkey wedge here and this, that, and a bunch of different shafts, and just get them all the same and keep the game simple. I mean, as amateurs, we just got to do as much as we can to make sure that the game is completely simple. And even the pros are doing it. I mean, every single one of that, from his 4-through pitching wedge and his 3 wedges, they are all Project X LZ 6.5, 125 grams. Boom. Okay, just keep it simple. I don't know if he's on ping staff. I don't know. He was 350 something in the world. I don't know if he's on staff or if he had to purchase his equipment. If he has to purchase his equipment and this is what he was playing with and this is what he won with, I think Ping will pick him up pretty quickly, and he should be on all kinds of commercials for him, right? So pretty interesting stuff there. So let's get back to our little screen here. There we go. I'll move myself down a little bit. Can I do that? Oh, how about that? Good. Okay. So let's move to the next screen then. Actually, real quick, because I wanted to go in to his year so far, which is, we haven't heard a lot about him. He has been on tour, and let's bring this up really quick. If you have, it's a little history of, where can I put myself? Can I hide myself down in here? Boom, somewhere in there. Okay, cool. So if you look at his scores here, he came out at the Safeway Open and actually did pretty well. I mean, when he got done, he was, 17th. And got 44 FedEx Cup points. And so, I mean, hey, he was kind of cruising along there, and he was 17th in the FedEx Cup. And then next week, he dropped to 41st, and then 94th, and then he had a little bit 17 under, right, at the Desert Classic. Got him back up into 75, and then he dropped to 92, and then 74, and then 94, and then 109, and 129, and didn't do anything here to change anything, and kind of worked his way up. I'll keep bringing it up here. So it's just sort of interesting to see what kind of happened here, right? 94, 109. You got 129 here. Let's see if my cursor starts showing up. There you go. Oh, it doesn't really work very well, does it? So you got 129th, up minus 11, down to 122, 129, 141, 126, boom, down to 40 with the win. So you can kind of see his year has been, it started out okay and then sort of went up there where he was kind of in trouble. And now with this victory, boom, he's in pretty good shape again. So kind of cool to see, and I'm just really excited for him. Okay, let's keep moving then. So what does this victory do for our good friend, Nate Lashley? Well, he went from 132nd in the FedEx Cup points that we just saw down to 40. Really needs to be within the top. He said in his post-game interview that's what he's going to be focused on, and of course he would be. This gets him into the British Open, not the Open Championship, the British Open over at Port Rush, which will be cool. He said he'd never been to Europe. So how cool is that? So he's on his way to Europe now. He'll be playing in the Masters. Such a cool thing. His world golf rankings went from 353, which is why I don't know if he was sponsored by Ping, all the way down to 101, where he leapfrogged one Zach Johnson, who has a couple majors, has just been sliding. So he's up above. I thought that was, I just happened to see those two articles back to back. So he's now ranked higher than Zach Johnson. Okay, next little step here, consistency rating. This is something that we always look at to see how he's been playing throughout his career and what his consistency is like. You can see here, I love this consistency scale because it gives, before I did this, I always tried to figure out and wonder where the players fit in. Like they talk about how great Matt Kuchar is, but I'm like, okay, but is he a better or worse than so-and-so? Or is he better and worse than so-and-so? And you just kind of never knew. And then year to year, it was always different. But you just don't know over the course of their career, how awesome are they? And so that always kind of confused me and made me wonder. Well, if you look at it now, I've basically created this scale based on their career stats of how many tournaments they've entered and how many cuts they've made. And just kind of divide the two. So anybody who's made the cut over 90% of the time is considered a legend. And there's only one who won this year, and that's Tiger Woods. In the elite category, those who make the cut 80 to 89% of the time, you've got Koepka, McIlroy, Molinari, Dustin Johnson, Mickelson, Rose, Cantlay, right? Those are the guys that have won this year that are in that elite level. You've got those that are in the solid level, JB Holmes, Mitchell, Casey, Woodland. Woodland's close, though, to bumping up into that elite level. And those players that are good players, going to keep their card, but, been struggling a little bit. McDowell, Kisner, Pan, Palmer, Reavie. That's those are the sort of the ones that just kind of keep hanging on year after year after year, but never really sort of break through and become, the elite or the legends. And then you've got 59% and below. Those are the guys that are always struggling to keep their cards at the end of the year. And that's just the way it is. And there's a whole bunch of players that fit into that category. We only list the ones that have won this year, and that's Connors, Homa, and Kang, and obviously now Lashley. And those guys now, they were going to lose their cards. The probability was pretty high, and because they've won, they've picked up a couple years of, and it's really that, right? They've got a couple of years of job security, and they're going to be playing in the majors, and what does that do for a career? I'm sure that there's a lot of players out there who just didn't quite get it done and lost their card, but they were definitely good enough to get there. And this Nate Lashley is one where it's just like, okay, we know just that there's just a lot of deep talent out. There's just a lot of good golfers out there. And he won a PGA Tour event going away by 6 strokes. And he was just fighting to get into this tournament. And yet he won it in a big way. He was so dominant that his strokes gained total was 5th largest of the year. And he was second alternate. I mean, that's just how strong the fields are out there. We've got a lot of amazing players on the Latino Tour, up in the McKenzie Tour. You've got amazing players on the, the Corn Ferry? Is it Corn Ferry? Is that right? No, Corn Ferry. I think that's right. I think I tried to say that there's no such thing as a Corn Ferry. So I think it's the Corn Ferry Tour, not the Web.com Tour. Just so many really, really good players. We actually had the Corn Ferry Tour here in Utah, the Utah Championship, yada, yada. So this week. Anyway, so a lot of good players. And Nick Lashley, I'm sure that there's a lot of them out there like, I played with this guy. I can beat this guy. And he's now a PGA Tour winner. That's how deep we are. The game's in great shape. So, and then this is, if you look at, obviously, Nate Lashley, he's been in 33 events and he's made 19 cuts. So his consistency number is 58%. And he's only been on tour 2 years. What I've done previously is kind of look to see how they're trending to kind of get an idea of are they getting better? Like Gary Woodland is obviously getting better. Ches Reavie is obviously getting better because they're trending better year after year after year. Well, we don't have a huge sample size, obviously, with Nate Lashley, but in 2018, he only made 47% of his cuts, and that honestly should be a different color, right? So let me bring up the form. Let's change the color right now. Oh, on the fly. Oh, on the fly, and that one's different too. So on the fly publishing, folks. That's the beauty of live. Boom, there you go. Okay. Didn't get those updated. And then we can get rid of this. There you go, folks. Yeah, there's not a lot of fancy stuff going on with these lives. I'm producing on the fly, folks. But anyway, you can see here how he's trending. In 2018, only 47% of his cuts, less than half, which, I mean, how in the world do you have confidence coming into 2019 making less than half your cuts? But here he is, now considered a solid. This year he's been playing solidly, and he made 296K last year total. He's already up over 1.88. But again, he made 1.3 for the victory. So he'd only made 500K or so. And his FedEx Cup points, we know he's ranked 40th, but that's 759 FedEx Cup points, quite a bit more than what he did all of last year. So good stuff for Nate there for sure. Okay, now we're going to get into these fun benchmark numbers, and I'm going to move myself out of the way. Come here, friend. I'm supposed to. I'm going to put myself up out of the way there. Okay, so yeah, what we've got here is, these are our benchmarks. And I created the benchmarks by looking at the 2018 PGA Tour stats totals and came up with just some numbers where if we were able to perform to these benchmarks or above, then we could say that we had a tour quality game, because I could find enough players below these numbers that were doing well enough to justify these numbers. Okay, so if we can perform in our own games above these numbers, we've got a tour quality game. And another cool thing about these benchmarks is it gives us the ability to analyze our game and understand very clearly and quickly what we need to work on. So we do this every week. We'll take a look at the numbers that they performed in the tournament, their performance numbers in the tournament, as well as their 2018 averages. And then we'll just kind of compare them to the benchmark and give some names of those that perform less than those benchmarks to justify them, to say, yeah, these are solid numbers. I know that there's some that, at least early on, there was some folks that were skeptical, but these numbers have held up very, very well all year. And we'll change them for 2019, but I don't suspect they're going to change much, honestly. I looked back 3 and 4 years when I made these up originally, and they've been pretty consistent for quite some time. So let's take a look at them really quickly. So first of all, this driving accuracy here, this portion, let's see if there it is. It's kind of showing driving accuracy. I wish it would just show up. There you go. So driving accuracy here for the tournament, 73%. He hit the fairway 73%, and only 61% for 2018. But obviously, right, 12 points higher for this particular tournament. That bodes well for him. Our benchmark is this 55%. And those players that hit fewer than 55% of their fairways, you've heard of a few of them. Phil Mickelson, Tony Finau, and Jimmy Walker, to justify that number. So if we're hitting less than 55% of our fairways, then that's a good spot to spend some time working on our game. But if we're hitting more than that, and we can find other areas down these benchmarks that we're not performing up to those benchmarks, then that's the part of our game we should be working on. Okay, greens in regulation. He hit 82% of his greens in regulation. And for 2018, he only hit 68%. Okay, so again, 14% higher. We usually do see that. The guys that win usually do play higher than their average the previous year. So we would expect that. The 2018 is very close to that 65% that we call our benchmark for greens in regulation. So if you're hitting less than 65%, you would want to work on your approach shots. Phil Mickelson, Jason Duffner, and Patrick Reed are individuals who hit fewer than 65% of their greens in regulation. And you've heard of a few of those. I have too. Okay, sand saves. For the tournament, he was 100%. Now, he wasn't in a lot of them, right? He hit 82% of his greens. But when he was in them, I think it was just a couple times, he got up and down, which is a pretty big deal, especially when you look at his 2018 number, 49% out of the sand. Our benchmark for us amateurs is 45% to get up and down out of the sand. Tony Finau, Bubba Watson, and Gary Woodland, our U.S. Open champion, were ones that got out of the sand less than 45% of the time for 2018. Okay, so again, a solid number there. Tony Finau, I mentioned this before. I will continue to mention it. Tony Finau actually gave me a lesson on how to get out of the sand, and now I don't play that way anymore. Especially when I found out that it was, there's one thing I still do. He talked about splashing the sand all the way to the hole. That's still pretty good when you're doing a chunk and run. But when he told me who taught him that technique, and then a couple of years later I figured out that guy really doesn't know what he's doing. And his first name starts with a D and ends with an Avid, and his last name starts with lead and ends with better. And it should be lead a lot lead worse. So, David Ledbetter, where good swings go to die. Ask Michelle Wee. Anyway, okay, let's continue to go here. So, tournament, strokes gained putting for this tournament. He picked up 2.33 strokes on the field every single day on average. Very strong performance. We know that he hit 22 out of 28. He hit 28 greens. He had 28 birdies. Of those 22 birdies, 22 of them were less than 10 feet. And he rolled those babies in. So you would expect him to have a strong putting week. And he did. He did very well. Especially when you look at in 2018, he literally had no advantage on the putting greens. It was essentially zero. He was the same as the field. So to pick up 2 strokes, that's essentially 9 strokes on the field when you don't pick up any strokes on the field. So you can see why he did, why he lapped the field, why he won by 6. He was putting way better than he normally did. His driving accuracy was better than it normally is. His greens in regulation were better than they normally is. His sand saves were better than they normally. His entire game was better than he averaged in 2018. Okay, for the scrambling, 85% up and down around the green. He averaged 61% for 2018. Our benchmark for scrambling is 55%. So we really should be getting up and down around the green around 55%, excluding the sand. The sand's got its own benchmark at 45%. So we need to monitor that, manage that, look at that. And if we're not getting up and down, then we need to spend some time at the chipping green and a lot of different lies and try to get up and down. Putting here, in scrambling, he was 61%, which is still above our 55%, so it's still in the green. Putting in 2018 from 5 feet, and again, this 5-foot putt has become much more important to data access golfers because of the data. I looked at some really cool data and figured out a way to utilize a certain form of practice to our benefit as amateurs. And maybe we'll talk about that in just a minute. In fact, I should probably do a graphic or something for it so we can talk about it a little more. I'll do that for next show. Actually, that would be really cool. So Nate made 79% of his 5-footers. Our benchmark is 80%. I can't change it just because there's Ian Poulter, John Robb, and Kevin Na make less than 80% of their 5-footers. So it's still a really good benchmark. And I kind of missed mentioning that Adam Scott, Gary Woodland, and Jason Kokrak get up less than 55% in 2018. So that is a good benchmark for scrambling. And then putts per round, Nate averaged in 2018 29.3 putts per round. And obviously our benchmark is 30. Okay, so those are the benchmarks to keep in mind again. So 55% driving accuracy, 65% for greens and regulation, 45% sand saves, 55% around the green, 80% for 5-footers, and less than 30 putts per round. Those are sort of the benchmarks. They kind of address every aspect of our game. I used to actually have it broken out to 25, 20, 15, and 10-footers as well until we changed our strategy up. And I'll touch on that really quickly just so everybody is on the same page. And I'll do a graphic for next show. I think that would be a good way to kind of show how this all works. But the data showed, looking at a lot of numbers, that we amateurs, we don't have a lot of time to practice, but we struggle from 5 feet and in, which is really ridiculous because it's not that big of a deal, but we just don't practice enough. So the idea came to mind that, hey, wait a second. What if we took all of our practice time on the putting green and just practiced from 5 feet and in? If we are able to increase our 5-footers from, say, 70% to 90, 95%, where we practiced it so much and we got into this whole concept of deep practice that we've talked about, where we work on something so many times that it becomes so second nature to us that it literally just works from our subconscious. It creates these neural pathways, and I don't want to get too geeky. We're geeking about golf. I don't want to get into how the brain works too geeky, but if you work on a particular activity long enough, then your brain, in order to save energy, will create these neural pathways, and the more you use those neural pathways, it will wrap it in this stuff called myelin, which is essentially insulation that makes sure that electric impulse moves as efficiently and as fast and as precise as possible. Okay, so if we took all of our time and we condensed all our putting time that we have and we condensed it down into 5-footers or less, and we worked on being deliberate, and we went into deep practice, and we just worked on our 5-footers from 1-footers to 5-footers and everything, and we just became so good at that we had this really ingrained deep neural pathway that was wrapped in myelin and was protected, and so we just had total confidence. And our subconscious could just go and make 5-footers all day long without thinking about them. That would free up our game so much that it would blow you away, right? So if you know you can make every 5-footer, now when you've got a chip and you're trying to get up and down and 55% of the time, you've now got a 10-foot circle around the hole that you can get the ball into, and 90-95% of the time you're going to knock that 5-footer down. That takes the pressure off your short game, off your scrambling game. It takes the pressure off if you want a birdie. Let's say you've got 30 yards in on a par 5, and you now know that you just have to get it within 10 feet. It takes the pressure off. In the sand, you can splash it out, and if you get half of them within 10 feet, that sucker's going down, you'll have a 45% bent. You'll make 45% of those. You'll get up and down more than 45% of the time. Your benchmarks will blow through the scrambling and the sand stroke and the sand saves benchmarks. If you can get that putting number up, it also takes off huge pressure off your lag putting. Now you're just putting through a 10-foot circle. Any moron can do that. It's easy. So then practicing your lag putting doesn't have to take a whole long. Go run a few and check out the green, and if you can put it within 10 feet, a 10-foot circle of any sort of putting hole on the putting green, you're good, dude. You've got it all figured out. You can go out and know that you're going to make those 5-footers all day. You'll make more par putts. I mean, how more confident would you be on a birdie putt, giving it a little pace to take some pace out and running it a couple feet by if 5-footers are nothing for you? Right? It changes the whole aspect of golf if you take that strategy. It's beautiful. It's awesome for amateurs. If we just can take this little time we have of practice and deep practice on the stuff that's going to improve our game most, that's where we'll get better. So yeah, we may not have a lot of time to practice, but when we do go out, we want to make sure that we are performing at an optimum level. That's awesome. So definitely look at your practice as far as putting goes. That's a great way to go. So we're not going to look at anything but 5-footers from now on. There's just no point. Anyway. So let's keep moving on. This is the fun part. We get to move into the money. Obviously, Nate Lashley, we saw, had only made 200-something K for all of 2018. And now he's up over $1 million. He's up over $2 million for his career. So the Rocket Mortgage first place prize was, let me see here. Oh, no, I guess I can put myself back. I just need to move myself so I'm not covering stuff up. Okay. So the Rocket Mortgage first prize paid $1.314 million. Total score was 263 strokes. So per day, Nate earned $328,000 per day. And per hour, again, averaging at 5-hour rounds, $65,700 per hour. And they basically $5K per stroke. Now for his career, he's up over $2 million with the 1.3 added in. So quick math there, right? He hadn't made a whole lot till now, right? He had only made about 500K, 800K total for his career, and he more than doubled that. Of the cuts made, 33 of these cuts, he now averages $62,000 per cut. And if we were to take, so let's just do that. So 32, we say he made 800 grand before this, divided by 32 cuts. He was only making 25,000 per cut. Now he's up to 62,000 with the win. And we can kind of see there that Tiger Woods makes $367,000 per cut. You know, you look at 62,000 and think, man, that is a joke. Or the 25,000 that he was making per cut before then. So he's jumped up quite a bit, right? You've got, let's see, Rory McIlroy. Again, these are the winners this year. He makes $340,000 per cut. Dustin Johnson makes $293,000 per cut. Justin Thomas is fourth on the list at $274,000 per cut. And then Brooks Koepka right there at $256,000 per cut on average over the course of their careers. Right? Now Nate's up to this 62,000, but when he teed off Thursday morning, he was making 25K per cut. So huge changes for him. It's super exciting. Just super happy for him. That is one of the most satisfying, awesome wins. Coolest story of the year, maybe. I mean, really amazing win for him. And I don't know what to say about it. I think that it eclipses Tiger Woods' win at the Masters. I realize as far as the history of golf, it puts Tiger closer and all that. But as far as a feel-good story of the year and a comeback player of the year and all of that, I don't know how you go away from Nate Lashley on this one. There was just Tiger had won before. Tiger knew what that felt like. Tiger knows, the Masters course really, really well. He still had that intimidation factor. Nate had none of that. He never played this course. Fortunately, I think a huge advantage was nobody else on tour had played this course either. It was the first time there was a PGA Tour event in Detroit ever, which I found astounding. But he got it done. It was really cool. Really, really cool to see him get it done. So congrats to Nate Lashley. I will cheer this guy. He will be one of my favorites forever, I know. But I'm really, really excited and happy for him. So good on you. Good on you, Nate. Okay, so I wanted to jump in there. I know this is a little bit longer than we normally do on a Data Monday. It's just such a cool win and such a cool Saturday. Steve Stricker got the job done. How do you not love this guy, right? I mean, he is, I've done it again. I'm just in the way of everything. I'm just going to get rid of myself. Everybody be happy with that. Boom, so I'm gone. Okay, so Steve Stricker with the big win at the U.S. Senior Open in dominant fashion. He set the scoring record at 19 under by 3 strokes, and he only had to shoot 1 under to do it on Sunday. I mean, he had already blown the field so far away that, and it was difficult, right? If you look down at the scores, I mean, he shot a 69 and 1 under. David Toms shot 2 under. Anybody chasing him never really got close. But he was the only player that had every single round in the 60s, which is cool. 62, 64, 66, 69. It would have been more fun if it was a 68. But whatever, Steve. You got to do what you got to do. And in the interview, I thought it was so fascinating that he didn't seem like he really enjoyed playing with the lead. Because you're just trying not to lose, as opposed to being aggressive and going out there and trying to win. He was playing away from pins, even if he missed the green, just because he knew that the guys behind him were going to have to chase him pretty hard, and the course was playing such that they were going to have a hard time doing it, and his strategy is totally dead on. And everybody did have a hard time doing it. He also talked about how that loss last week to Jerry Kelly when he missed the birdie putt on 18, how that kind of left him a little sore, and he wanted to do better. I found it so amazing, too. They discussed, at least they talked to Steve Stricker's wife, who was on the bag, and they did ask him, how he was going to pay her, and he says she can have whatever she wants, which is obviously the correct answer. So good for Steve there. He's an example to all of us on how we need to treat our spouses. But one of the things that I found really interesting is that she was super determined to get this win, too, because Steve had actually called her in to help him read that putt on 18 that he missed. And she said that she had read the putt improperly. And he went with it, and he missed it. And she's a very accomplished player. So she was super determined then to make sure that they got that done, and they did in amazing fashion, record-setting fashion. I mean, if you kind of look over this, he hit 80% of the fairways, which was 20 for 23rd. He hit his average drive was 278 yards. His longest drive was 319 yards. He did not get out of the sand once, but he didn't need to. He was only in 2 sand traps the entire week. His scrambling number is crazy, 89%, which puts him in first. Now, obviously, he hit a lot of greens, right? His greens in regulation were 75%. And some would say, hey, 75% isn't that great. You know, Nate Lashley did better than that. Well, 75% of the greens is that right, or am I wrong? Oh, no, he only hit 68% of the greens. So 75% is even better than that. So 75% of his greens, and I was sitting there kind of going, well, you hit, 80%, 75, but he was first in greens in regulation. So first in scrambling and first in greens in regulation, yeah, that's going to get it done in dominating fashion, right? For sure. And then he's always amazing on the greens. He finished fifth, putts per green, 1.67 putts per green. The cool number, though, really, if you want to see how dominant Steve Stricker was, his strokes gained total for the week, 24.291. Okay, how good is that? It's the strongest strokes gained total we've seen this year on the PGA Tour. Even, I mean, we talked about Nate Lashley being fifth on that list. 24.29 would be first. Now I realize it's the Champions Tour, but still, that is how dominant he was. He set a record by 3 strokes. He beat everybody by 6, and he was dominant in strokes gained, which levels, his performance versus everybody else's in the field. He killed them. So anyway, that is it for this Data Monday. Really cool week. Thank you for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this. Nick, so great for Nate Lashley to get this win. I don't know if it's weird to say I'm proud of him, but for what he's been through and what he's accomplished to get to this point, he will be a favorite of so many people for so long. It was so cool to hear that the Detroit fans had cheered him on. They are the city of comebacks and all that. So this was really, it was a perfect storm. It was cool that it happened there and it all worked out. And then for Steve Stricker, I mean, Ryder Cup champion next year, one of the nicest guys in golf. So funny to hear him talk about being awkward when he was playing with Jerry Kelly, because normally they're in team events together. He cheers for them. He cheers for him typically, and now he's like cheering for him, but he still wants to beat him, and that was just sort of awkward, which, only Steve Stricker would feel that way. The rest of us would want to, take his head off, but not Steve Stricker. He's that nice of a guy. So what a cool tournament. This has been such an amazing year of golf so far, and there's more to come. Really enjoying this year a ton. So much fun. And until next time, next live, who knows when, this is Aaron Stewart saying thank you for joining me on this Data Access Golf Live. Better data always means better golf, and we saw a lot of really cool data today. So thanks for joining me.